Silence is not a kind of luxury I can enjoy when it comes to bringing to your attention and spreading awareness about the fact that there is a nation that is getting annihilated and maybe even will cease to exist if the things will continue in the way they are today. And I'm speaking about Armenia and Artsakh and the atrocities of Azerbaijan. Now, there's lots of things that we can speak about here. There's lots to unpack, which I'm not going to make it an in-depth historical lesson kind of a video or documentary, because multiple hours for a podcast won't be enough to cover. And obviously you can also make your own research if you want to dig in deeper, which I will appreciate. But just keep in mind, FYI, the Azerbaijan state is top 5 countries in the world with the strongest censorship, right, and death of the reporters and people who, and the journalists, right, and people who do any sort of investigation. And so just keep that in mind. But before anything else, actually, before I'm gonna say what do I believe here, what kind of points of view I want to make, in reality, I'm not gonna even make as many points of view as much as I'm gonna call out several hypocrisies. Hypocrisies of few governments, hypocrisies of people, hypocrisies of several religions. And I also will try to provide ways you can help actually in terms of humanitarian effort to people who have been displaced, to the families of murdered and raped and tortured soldiers and civilians, 100,000 multiple families that suffered, 100,000 people in Artsakh that are displaced because this conflict was happening for 30 years and lots of people died. And but at this point the decision was it was forced decision, right, to give away the land and to literally displace those people to just supposedly prevent genocide, which I don't know if the genocide will be prevented this way. I think this is just the beginning of what Azerbaijan, supported by Turkey, want to continue to do against Armenians. And we all know the history with 1915, when several millions of Armenians were murdered, as well as Assyrians, Greeks, and Lebanese who suffered at the hand of Ottoman Empire. But yeah, lots of things to speak about. And I just want to show you a really quickly video. If you've never heard of this conflict, which is the problem, that's the whole point of me making this video, I want to show you this little clip of a podcaster called Matt Kim. I don't really know him, but it seemed like the video that he made was a good short way of outlining what's happening. However, some of the political points he made at the end, I will also briefly touch on with my specific point of view. So just bear with me.
I bet you've never heard of the Republic of Artsakh, unless you're Armenian. Today I'm bringing awareness to a lesser-known international conflict. It's complex, so I'd love your take on it. Artsakh is a region of the world smack dab in the middle of Russia, Turkey, and Iran, sandwiched between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and its history goes back thousands of years. Home to countless Christian monasteries and churches, and where many believed are buried the remains of John the Baptist. Artsakh has nearly 100% Armenian Christian population, speaks Armenian, and is one of the founding provinces of Armenia, dating back thousands of years. Except it's not its own country. It's an independent region within the borders of the oil-rich authoritarian state of Azerbaijan. In 1991, due to Soviet occupation and subsequent fall, Artsakh ended up on the wrong side of the border. Ever since then, Armenia and Azerbaijan have been in constant conflict over this region, most recently in 2020. That is, until now. For the last 9 months, there has been an Azerbaijani blockade around the coveted holy region, blocking of food and supplies, leaving the 120,000 residents, of which 30,000 are children, starving and helpless. In the last week, the conflict has escalated, with Azerbaijan shutting off all electricity and communications to this area and sending missiles and artillery, injuring civilians, including children. There are reports of rape and murder of Armenian children and women, but since the internet is turned off, no one really knows. At this point, what the people of Artsakh are asking for is humanitarian corridor to safely leave the area before the genocide takes place. The liberal globalist Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikos Pashinyan, who rose to power in 2018 as the smooth talker promising change and revolution, has settled into a seat of ultimate power quite comfortably, and has turned a blind eye on his fellow Armenians facing slaughter in Artsakh. The UN has also turned its back, as has the Biden administration, who continue to arm oil-rich countries of Azerbaijan and Turkey. We'll send a blank check to protect the freedom and democracy of the Ukrainians, but barely a free tweet in regards to Artsakh, instead arming the aggressors. Which one is it? Are we protecting people, or are we protecting our investments?
A lot of great points and good outline, and I will address some of those that are more politically oriented points in the minute, but I want to first start by saying that, well, you know, if in any war, right, whether you believe in the cause or not, whether you have been just told by your generals and your state leadership to attack another country, whether it's a sovereign or not sovereign region, but just at the end of the day to kill other human beings, perhaps whether it's going to be a defense or attack, that's, again, it depends on the scenario. But in every war, the killing, right, even the killing, you would think, you may understand, you may somehow contemplate and think about this perspective from this lens and try to maybe justify it. But what I can't justify, what I don't understand, what I can't contemplate is complete evil by Azerbaijan, where they are not just killing, they are literally raping, torturing, butchering humans that are also not only soldiers, which, by the way, just because it's soldiers doesn't make it right, but it's also civilians, it's women and children. And so numerous reports that also have not been covered by media very well, or not have been covered at all. And it's just, if I even say it, I don't know if this video will be flagged, but essentially they cut in pieces of a woman, they're raping her, then they're raping her after she died, then they doing so much disgrace by cutting off her genitalia and trying to mess with I don't even want to say it because it's just insane. So to me, this is not war, and this is just evil beyond evil. And in war, once again, there is one side and another side, and there is a killing, there is a strategy, there is all sorts of things, and it's horrific, and in every situation, in every part and point of history. But this, when somebody does that, those people are mentally deranged human beings. And so you just need to think, who told Azerbaijani soldiers to do that? I don't know. Are those all people like that in that country? I don't know. But I'm just bringing it to your attention. Now, the hypocrisies of governments, and partly that Matt was calling out, is that I'm just going to ask questions here. So when America supports Ukraine, and I'm also born in Russia, raised in Ukraine, and I'm Armenian. So by the way, I'm as objective as I can, and I stand against any sort of war. But I mean, still, it begs a question to me whether we support Ukraine as a Western society because it's in the name of the democracy and liberation and you know, help against the Russian atrocities, or is it investments, our personal interest, it's weakening the Russian army and all these sanctions against Russia because we are just not allied with them, right? When I say we, I mean the Western world, because now I'm actually living in the United States and I'm thinking like an American, whether I am or not, but I'm trying to just get all of these perspectives into one, and I'm asking the question, why then there is support there but there is no support here? Is that because we had some agreement with Russia? There was international agreement? Well, so did Ukraine and so did other countries, but I think maybe it's for some other reasons, which makes me to believe that there is a hypocrisy here, right? And you will hear some of the politicians in the United States and UK and some other Western countries talking about this a little bit, just to win points on the front of Armenians who assimilated in those countries. You have 1.5 or even more millions of Armenians here in the States alone. So if you just say the right word, maybe they will vote for you. So that's another thing, that there is hypocrisy on the American side, on the Western side. I'm not sure. You tell me. Maybe that's not hypocrisy. Maybe I'm really bad at understanding comparative studies and geopolitics. But if you wish to educate me, please do. Another hypocrisy with Russia is that they supposedly a peacekeeper on the side of the borders with Azerbaijan and Armenia, and specifically in Artsakh region, right? But then they quite play both sides, trying to pretend like they're helping both. And there is obviously the pressure because there is a lot of Muslim oriented countries within Russia, or nations, right, or ethnically people who are specifically following Islam. And I wouldn't have any problem with it. I have some of my best friends Muslims, but then again, religion is used in some sense for Turkey and Azerbaijan to partner up and maybe bring back the old days and the power of Ottoman Empire. And that's where there is Turkey and NATO, and Russia says that the government of Russia is supposedly friends with Turkey, but then they are enemies, but then they are playing both sides. They don't want to have their new war with Chechnya. If the Muslims there will be upset if you don't support the Azerbaijani Muslims, and all this kind of gem of all things, you know, which is lots of hypocrisy there, because obviously Russia is not a peacekeeper and they're not doing anything to support Armenians the way they say they would. Now, there is another hypocrisy I wanted to call out, which is really surprising. I'm rereading the Bible these days, and Exodus, Moses, how God saved and liberated Jewish people from the atrocities and oppression of Egypt, and then you have the Holocaust thousands of years later, and then you have things in between, and you wonder why then Israeli government sells real serious weapons, drones, to Azerbaijan for multiple years, knowing that they use them against Artsakh, against Armenians, to kill them, to murder them, to rape, to butcher, to torture, to all sorts of things. And I don't understand that, because if you say you all want the Holocaust to never happen again for every nation on earth, not only for people of Israel, right? Then why are you supporting the genocide of Armenian people then? That's really weird to me. And then you also would, the government also will say that they're against of the radical Islam, that there is supposedly part of Islam that is radical, that also justifies all sorts of atrocities in the name of the religion, and they will say that that's the Palestinian way of doing things, but then they support Azerbaijan. So who is radical, where exactly? I don't know. Everybody is a hypocrite here, and you know, the more I live, the longer I live on this planet, the less I want to stand with any flag, despite some of its perceptions of the values that that flag and that country supposedly possesses. Because what I see is that everybody talks about values and beliefs and principles, whether it's a religion, faith, political views or anything, but they don't exercise them. They actually do completely different thing from what they say they will do, or they usually do. And so that's the kind of insanity we face. Another hypocrisy I will call out once again, which both Christianity and Islam, and when I say hypocrisy, I don't mean the religion in general, I mean the people who exercise religion in their own ways. And in Azerbaijan in particular, I mean, we know that in Islam, Muslims believe in Jesus Christ as one of the prophets, right? And of course, we have the difference in the way we believe things. We don't believe as Christians that Jesus is just the prophet. He's obviously Son of God, and he had the divinity that no other man had. And there are multiple ways you can describe that, but of course there was crucifixion and the resurrection that Muslims don't believe in. But at least they believe that Jesus Christ is a prophet, and he is the one who will come back and kill Antichrist when the judgment day comes, right? And so there is a respect for prophet in general. So why then Azerbaijan chooses to purposefully destroy our churches? The oldest churches in the world are located in Armenia. If you didn't know, Armenians are the first one to adopt Christianity as a state religion in 301. The oldest cathedral in the world is Echmiadzin Cathedral, that is 1700 and more years old. And so the question then, why they destroy our churches? Why they purposefully play the music that when in the villages of Artsakh, they would play some provocative music and songs and sayings to sort of spark the feeling of being enemies on a religious level, right, between Christianity and Islam. Why everybody says it's territorial dispute, but then Azerbaijan is happily using religion as a tool to provoke all sorts of things. And then again, if you believe in the prophet, why would you even if you believe that Muhammad is the last one, why would you destroy the church? That's what I don't understand. So hypocrisy is there. Now, hypocrisy on the Christian side is that you have the Western Christians and the Catholics predominantly, and the Vatican and the US and all these countries, right? And they all in one voice, like usually, would say things about peace and support this country, support humanitarian efforts here and there. But then I feel like they are more busy with supporting wrong flags, dangerous ideologies, circular cults that go in complete conflict with the scripture and the word of God, than of helping actually fellow Christians, which is really weird to me, because Noah's Ark is, if you don't know that part as well, Noah's Ark stopped near the mountain Ararat, which is historically Armenian territory, and then we even have the Noah's Ark in one of the, I believe in Echmiadzin piece of the Noah's Ark. So don't get me started on the religion aspect, but I don't understand the Christians that say too loud about the way they would do something for the fellow Christians of another country on a state macro level policy-wise, right? But then they do nothing with Armenia. Why? Is it because Armenia doesn't have many resources to offer? Is it because it's not popular? Is it because Turkey supports Azerbaijan and Turkey part of NATO, and US is also part of NATO? Is it, or maybe the European Union is kind of attached to NATO as well? Like what's going on here, right? The hypocrisy here of Christians as well that I don't understand. If you also support it, then perhaps you need to support for real and actually on a practical level. So there's lots of nuances here. And then the final hypocrisy for all of us, and me included, in the sense that all of us have this complex of God, right? We can solve everything. There is explosion here, there is poverty there, there is racial injustice here, discrimination here. Let's support this, let's support that. Ooh, let's go protest. You can't solve every problem, and you shouldn't. You're not supposed to. In fact, 50 years ago, you wouldn't even know what the hell is going on in another country. Now you know everything in an instant. Well, not everything. That's why I'm making this video. Obviously, the Armenian issue was not covered that much, but you kind of can get the knowledge of it in a sense that it still goes through some channels. And so whether it's people in a democratized way sharing, or it's media companies, etc. But the point is, if everybody has the complex of a social justice warrior, right, then you might as well point your attention to Armenia for a change. Because if you want to save the world in every way, please help people who have been, families of whom have been completely destroyed, annihilated. It's the people of faith. You might not be a Christian, cool, but at the least you have some humanity in you, right? You don't want to see war, you don't want to see atrocities and evil of the Azerbaijan that they're doing against ethnic Armenians. Okay, cool, then maybe you can support, maybe you can provide some support, and maybe we can close out this, run of hypocrisies with actually something positive, which is hard to be positive and when you're heartbroken and frustrated, to say the least, and feel powerless, but there are ways you can support, and I want to show you a few organizations just as an example of the ones that you can donate your time or money, or at the least maybe repost their websites or ask them how else you can help. And maybe even if you are a believer, then maybe say a prayer for the people of Artsakh so that they survive at the least. At this point, it's a survival. It's not even a matter of politics, the land that we are giving away and all sorts of things. But yeah, it's very hard to not be emotional with this one. So I'm going to show you in a second these few organizations where you can help. So one of the organizations that I would recommend is Armenian General Benevolent Union, which by the way is a very famous and old organization that they have their own relief fund specifically for the children people of Artsakh, and definitely you can reach out to them directly. You can double check if they meet all of the requirements for I believe they're registered in the US as the non-profit. It means you can get the tax benefits that you'd like in terms of your donation, if that's going to be a monetary donation, right? Another organization I'm donating through at this point is actually Armenian Church, which is just it's the selection of churches that are located in the United States, and they also have their Artsakh Refugee Fund that you can donate through. And then the last one, which it's not the least, obviously there are many other organizations, but I just know I donated to these organizations, and I know what they stand for. I know that they are official. I know that they are legitimate. I know they have a history and reputation. That's why I'm sharing it with you. That's how you can help. And so this is Armenia Fund, and they support various initiatives, including rebuilding Armenia and Artsakh. But I don't know if we can rebuild Artsakh when we give away land at this point. But what I'm saying is, if there are some initiatives you wouldn't want your money to go to, no problem. But you definitely can choose to give it specifically to refugees, and they have obviously the sections for that particular cause, right? So once again, it's very challenging to make this video. I wanted to spread awareness. I want to call out a few hypocrisies. It's not really a lesson or historical documentary of any kind. It's not so much of being a political commentator or analyst here. I'm just an Armenian man who sees these atrocities and wants to do at least something, right? And I wanted to share this because again, there are so many hypocrisies, whether it's government, people, those specifically on the religious side, from all sorts of angles. And my thing is, well, if you are saying you're going to help, then maybe you can help people in Artsakh as well. Now, the part of the politics in terms of whose fault is where, Armenians also at fault themselves in many ways, because specifically we have our own internal corruption or problems with leadership decisions even way before current prime minister was in power. So there are many nuances, right? When I call out hypocrisies, I always start with myself and with our people and with our nation, with our country, whether it's going to be me coming from the Ukrainian background or me being ethnic Armenian. But the point is, somebody from outside literally harasses the nation, wants to annihilate it, wants to continue the genocide. And you don't have to be a political expert to understand that. And you don't have to necessarily support one side or the other, but you can support the people who suffer. Because I always say, the governments and those in power play games when the civilians and just, normal people living their lives are the ones who are suffering. So if you think you can help, then these are the ways you can. Thank you for your attention, and God bless.